Hi everyone, for today's activity, we are going to be creating a Starburst Optical Illusion Heart, or for short, Op Art, okay? So what you're going to need for this project is you're going to need a white paper. It doesn't matter what size, but just the larger the size, just remember that you're going to be using a lot more ink. So you might want to start small to start off with. I believe I am using a 4x4 piece of paper right here, 4 inches by 4 inches. You're also going to need a ruler and a pencil and some markers. Today I'm using Sharpie markers because you get a very good, very saturated black with a Sharpie marker, but you can use any markers, whatever you have on hand, and you can also use colored pencils and crayons as well. So whatever you have today to create the color on your image, you're more than welcome to use. Okay, let's begin. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to create your heart, okay? So I'm going to, in the very center of my heart, of my paper, I'm going to create a heart. I'm actually going to create concentric hearts, meaning that there's going to be one inside of the other. Okay, so there's my first heart, and then I'm going to create my second heart. Now it can be as many hearts as you like. I'm just doing 2 for demonstration purposes. You can actually add another one in there as well. After you've created your heart, you're then going to create a vanishing point, which is simply a dot. And I'm going to put mine off to the side there. But this dot is going to be used to create lines that are going to radiate outward to the edge of the paper. And what this is going to do is this is going to aid in creating the perception that you can actually, it'll lead you back into a certain space of the heart. It's going to actually lead the viewer's eye directly back to that space. And there's a couple of tricks that we can use, that artists use to do that. The first one that we use is called a vanishing point. So you're just going to create this dot, and then all of the lines are going to lead right back away from this dot. So you're going to take your ruler and you're going to make a series of 12 lines. Now, if you want to use more lines, you're more than welcome to do that. The more lines, the better, actually. But just for this purpose today, I'm just going to create 12 lines. Remembering that when you use your ruler, you want to put your pencil point on the ruler and then angle it to wherever you want to go, and then lead it outward. Okay, we don't want to draw on top of the dot, because then we'll go past that vanishing point, and we don't want to do that. We want to make sure that every line is leading directly to the vanishing point. Okay, so how many do I have here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. Now they can go any way you want. They don't have to be in a certain spot as well. Just a reminder with that as well. So now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to now create my shapes. Now the idea is that you don't want any of these lines to show. What you want to do is you want to make sure that it just looks like they are strategically placed. Black shapes have been strategically placed on here to form a heart. But you don't want to make it look like it's done, it's actually drawn there. So what I encourage you to do is I'm going to encourage you to start with the first heart. Work from the center outward, and you want to make sure that you create a very neat and even space and pattern of lines and shapes and of color, so that it really does accentuate the appearance as that it's radiating outward. That's the most important. Your craftsmanship is going to be very important. With this particular project, neatness is important, okay? Now, make sure that if you are using a marker like myself, I'm using a permanent marker, make sure that you have a few markers on hand like what you see here. And the reason I have a few markers on hand is because I don't want to run out in the middle of me creating this image. Also, make sure that you have paper, if you're using a marker, that you have paper underneath of the object that you're creating, of the paper that you're working on, because this will bleed through, and then when you lift up your paper, you're going to have a little stain from the marker. So make sure that you are mindful of that and put another paper underneath. Now, what I'm doing is I'm creating an alternating shapes, black, white, and alternating pattern. And this is my chance now on this project. The objective is to utilize everything that we have been studying from the beginning of the year. We've been working on the elements of art, and now we're going to take everything that we've learned about line, we've learned about color, we've learned about shape, and we're going to apply it in this lesson so that we can learn how to create an optical illusion, which uses the application of implied contour. Contour meaning the outline or shape of something, and implied meaning that it's suggested that it's there, and that creates the illusion of, for us, it's going to be able to create the illusion of the heart. But we want to make it appear as though it isn't really there. Okay, so focusing on this, we've worked on our first heart. I've created this pattern. Now you can now lead out into the second heart. But just be mindful that if this part right here on the first heart is black, then this will be white. If this is white, then you know that this is going to be black. And that's how you're going to organize your shapes and organize what you're working on. If you try to do it like row by row, like black, white, you might find that you'll make a mistake. And my goodness, you don't want to make a mistake well into your project, because then you'll have to start over and you'll be looking at it forever. So just be mindful of that, to organize it. Be very careful about what you're doing when you're doing it, and make sure you have great neatness and craftsmanship when you're creating your image. Okay, it's helpful if you trace the shape first and then color it in, but make sure you have a point. Now, just to give you a little bit of background information on op art, it's a style or genre of art that was first experimented on by an artist named Victor Vasarely. He's a Hungarian artist, meaning that he's from the country of Hungary, which is a country that's located on the continent of Europe. And he was the first person to really experiment with this style of art, which is very modern for this particular time. And to create this illusion, it's like if a musician was to create a certain style of art that came out. This is big. This is really, really big. So in the art world at this time, this was like fascinating for people, and it still is fascinating to this day. This actually is one of my favorite styles of art. It's so interesting to me to look at, to create. I find it very interesting, and maybe you will as well. Now notice how this spot right here is white, so I had to make sure I left that because that was part of the first heart. So I outlined it to make sure that I got everything in there. And I'm going to keep coloring this until I fill it all in. Now, thinking about extending this, what you're going to do now after you're done creating your pattern for your heart, what you're going to do is think about if you want your heart to really pop or not. So if you really want it to pop, what you can do is you can take your heart and you can add color. But when you add color, be mindful that if everything is intentional, okay? So if you want to make sure that your heart pops, now you don't have to, you can leave it black and white and it simply stays beautiful. But if you want to take it an extra step and you want to add color, what you can do is you can take the heart and you can color that with a warm color. And we know that from learning about warm colors and cool colors, we know that warm colors are orange, red, and yellow. And they can also be pink, and we can utilize warm brown as well. You can place the heart and color that as a warm color, and then you can take a cool color like green, blue, or purple and put it in the background. And just the contrast of that alone will, you can see, really make your heart pop. Okay, and that's only if you want it to stand out. Maybe you want people to look at your picture and you want them to just say, oh wow, that's a really interesting, really interesting image. And it's perfectly fine in black and white. But if you want to extend it and take it to another level, or have a different look, then you can simply just utilize what you know about color, and the contrast is what's going to make it really stand out. So I'm finishing up. I had finished up my first and my second heart, and now all I'm simply doing is going over the space in the background. Now, you might see in the video here that I am switching markers. I'm utilizing a bigger marker to color in my larger spaces, and that helps as well. So my fine tight spaces, I use a thin marker with a good point. And now what I'm doing is I'm going over my larger spaces with a larger marker to fill up the space more quickly. I will go over this and make sure that my lines are very neat at the end. And also just to remind you that if you have that paper underneath, it's helpful for you because you can then color off the paper and not worry about leaving a stain on your paper. So now you see I have my black and white Art Starburst Heart. It looks like I can just take my fingers and walk right back into that space, or it's radiating outward. And then I mentioned to you about using a warm color against a cool color background. So I'm going to take this warm color and I'm going to color in my heart, my first one. And again, what I'm doing is I wanted my heart, the intention was that I wanted my heart to really stand out. So I'm using a warm color to showcase that. And then I might even take a second warm color and go behind this one. That's very close, but I could have used a lighter color. Now, I did tell you that this pink can be used as a warm color. Not your traditional warm color, but it can be used as a warm color. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to contrast that in the background by using a cool color. I am coloring this with crayons to go quicker. And now I'm going to use my cool color in the background. I'm going to use green today, guys, because that's a really nice contrast to the pink. And you can see already when you put that cool color against that warm color, it really does make it stand out. And it's helpful, again, if you work in a small space, meaning a small paper to start off with when you're practicing and learning how to create op art. Because if you make a mistake, it isn't so drastic as if you were to work on a very large piece. But as you become more comfortable with creating this kind of artwork, op art, you're going to find that you're going to want to create more because it's really, really, really fun. So this is what it looks like. Our objective today was to utilize what we knew about, what we know and what we've been learning about through the elements of art of line and shape and color, and applying that in a way, a strategic way of applying it to create implied contour of shapes, placing shapes strategically to make them appear as though there's a shape here, but it really isn't. It's just the application and the placement and the alternating lines and shapes and colors that make it appear as though it's there and create that illusion of the optical heart. So there you have it. There's your lesson. I hope that you enjoyed this lesson for today. Make sure you try it out, and I'm looking forward to seeing all of your work. Thank you, everyone.